Really excited to have my guest in studio. His name is Jeff Younger, and you've probably heard his story. Probably like, that name sounds familiar. I can't quite put my finger on it because this story has been everywhere. Jeff, thanks for joining us to talk about this today.
Glad to be here.
Can you give me a brief synopsis on what happened? And I know it's not easy to run through it as quickly as possible, but just like an overview on what happened to you and why you're here today.
Okay, I'll give you the main highlights. Starting at 2.5, my then wife, who is a pediatrician in Coppell, Texas, began to try to transition my son to a girl while we were still married.
At 2.5? At
2.5. When I put my foot down and stopped it, she used her relationships with primary care providers, psychologists, psychiatrists, physicians. She filed for divorce and forced me out of my house. I moved a mile up the road from my house, and I took the first iPhone video I ever took. If you go onto YouTube and search for Mommy Says I'm a Girl, it went mega viral worldwide. I'm an Orthodox Christian, so it even went worldwide in Eastern Europe and Russia, went everywhere. And it's my son saying that his mother's telling him that he's a girl and he believes it. And he's just past his 3rd birthday in that video. She lied to the court and lied to the custody evaluator. His name is Blake Mitchell. You'll see that I named people's names. I've never been sued because truth is an absolute defense against defamation. His name is Blake Mitchell, practices out of Frisco, Texas. He found that I had made a false accusation against my wife, that she wasn't transitioning my son, and on the basis of me making a false accusation that she was, he recommended that I get less than standard possession time with my son. So that was the first lie right out of the gate with the psychologist. So she starts ramping up the transitioning right after that. I even showed him that video. Mommy Says I'm a Girl. That doesn't even appear in his report. He just lied to the court. Name is Blake Mitchell. So then we go on after the trial, after the divorce trial. She starts to hardcore transition my son. She fully socially transitioned him. So by the time he's 4, he's completely living as a girl in public. He starts school when he gets older. He goes into 1st grade. I'm taking him to school, on Fridays. She's taking him to school the other days. I found out later that the school I would take him to school in boys' clothes, and his teacher would give him a dress and change him into girls' clothes and make him use the girls' restroom, and they never told me about it. I sued them, but it turns out that school districts have sovereign immunity like the states, and it's very difficult to sue them, so that went nowhere. We went to trial again because she had ramped it up so much. So in 2019, at this little courthouse, 255th District Court in Dallas County under Judge Kim Cooks, the top experts in the world on transgender medicine showed up on both sides of the issue, and we had a 5-day trial in the matter. I had deposed one of their experts. Her name is Johanna Olsen Kennedy. At that time, she ran the largest gender clinic in the world in Los Angeles. I asked her one question in that sworn testimony, and her answer to that testimony caused them to not put her on the stand in front of the jury. Here is the question and her answer. I said, "What is your medical justification for removing healthy body parts from children?" And she said, quote, "If the body parts are causing psychological distress, they're not healthy body parts, and we're medically justified in amputating them." Unquote. The lawyer that was in the room quit the case right after that, and they put another primary lawyer in place. I thank her for that. She had some ethics. We went to trial. They very successfully impugned my character throughout the whole trial. But in the end, I got 50-50 custody, no child support. Most importantly, I got a check on all medical on my son. So she could never do this without my permission, okay? The liberal judges in Dallas County got very upset with this ruling. Sua sponte, meaning of their own accord, that's a legal term, means on their own. They transferred the case to the 301st District Court under Judge Mary Brown, and I will henceforth call her Bloody Mary Brown. Bloody Mary Brown not only did not implement the jury verdict, but she systematically stripped me of all my parental rights over a period of 18 months, to the point where I got put on supervised possession because I wouldn't stop coming onto shows like yours telling people to outlaw these practices. They had put me under a gag order, and some of the people in your audience who are lawyers are going to have a hard time believing this, but I've had lawyers have to actually view the gag order that I was put under. I'm telling you, this is accurate what I'm saying. I was barred from talking about transgenderism, gender expansiveness, whether my sons were boys or girls, and I was prohibited from publishing any newspaper articles, books, doing any podcasts, doing any video interviews. It was a total prior restraint on all speech until my sons turned 18.
And this is after you won a court case.
Correct.
This is the result of winning.
That is correct. And that is Judge Bloody Mary Brown who did that. I kept telling her that I was not going to stop violating the gag order because I have a right to speak and I have a right to protect children and try to get laws passed and to talk to my fellow citizens in a democracy. And I begged her to hold me in criminal contempt. You know, I told her, I said, I'm in maximum contempt of the order. I'm not following it. I'm in maximum contempt of the office of the court because no Texas court should ever violate a citizen's rights this way. And I have maximum contempt for you, Judge Brown, because you're a scandalously corrupt in office. So I'm in maximum contempt of court, and you're obligated as a judge to give me 18 months in the Lou Sterrett County Jail. And the reason I wanted that is that would allow me to file a writ of habeas corpus with the appeals court to overturn the gag order. But more importantly, it would have set a precedent across entire Texas that you can't do gag orders like this. And the judges said, we don't want him to have a precedent like that. So instead, she said, she reasoned this way, and she literally reasoned this way in her orders. She said, Jeff Younger is not following my illegal gag order. Because he's not following my illegal gag order, the gag order was entered in the interests of his sons. He's not following my illegal gag order that was entered in the interests of his sons, therefore he's not acting in the interests of his sons. And on that basis, she gave me supervised visitation with my sons. She chose a gay and transgender psychologist group for me to do the supervision. And I never went because they refused to let me take my son out of address. They were forcing me to call him by his girl's pronouns, his girl's name, and they wouldn't let me pray with my son. So that went on for about 6 months, and they said, well, hey, you've abandoned your children because you're not visiting them, because you're not going to the supervised visitations and saying your son's a girl to his face. So we're going to let your ex-wife move to California.
So, wow.
That's literally what happened. I went up to the Texas Supreme Court on that one and lost. They let her move to California.
So at this point, I mean, you're watching the courts take away your rights to your son.
Yes.
You know what the end result of that is going to be.
Yeah.
How do you keep it all together?
Prayer, fasting, and doing good works. It's really just that simple. You know, if I wasn't a Christian, there'd probably be dead bodies everywhere. But I seek repentance all the time, and I keep repenting, and I keep repenting, and I keep repenting. And I refuse to give in to despair, which I think is one of the worst sins.
So why is it that the system is siding with your ex-wife at this time over you?
The answer is a 100% known, 100% objectively known. It's just not known by a lot of people. The fundamental issue with American politics is this. We have a single donor class, and it runs both parties. And the consensus among the parties historically in the United States since World War II has been this. Either party, doesn't matter who wins, is going to try to give a candidate that's acceptable to that donor, to that single donor class, right? So it really didn't matter who won. We never got a change of policies. And we all have experienced that if you've been voting for very long. 10 years, you've been voting for 10 years, you've seen this. You can vote for whoever you want, but the policies never change. The donor class controls that. So it turns out that the donor class of the Republican Party, which ostensibly controls Texas, where my sons were, is spectacularly leftist. The largest donor to the Republican Party is a guy named Paul Singer. He is the founder of the Human Rights Campaign, which is the largest and most powerful gay and transgender lobby group in the world. He's the reason that you had gay pride flags flying at all of our U.S. embassies. He's the guy that created the DEI scorecards that forced people to hire gays into management positions and corporations and so forth. He has a gay son, and because of that, he founded this Human Rights Campaign. He also funds the Manhattan Institute. A lot of people think of the Manhattan Institute as very conservative. I encourage you to go out to YouTube, search for Manhattan Institute, Paul Singer, and you'll see a number of Manhattan Institute interviews with Paul Singer about why he supports trans and kids. So the donor class of the party, the top donors, are all for trans and kids and transgenderism. The Adelson family, who is the largest donor to the Republican National Committee, Your audience may wonder, you watch the RNC on television, right? It's RNC convention. They always have a cross-dresser they put on stage. Lady MAGA or somebody, they always put a cross-dresser up on stage at some point. Miriam Adelson funded the transgender story hours for kids in America that we were fighting in all the libraries. That was funded by the third largest Republican donor. Okay. The child transgender movement was started by a guy named James Pritzker, who at the time, back in the early 2000s, was the third largest donor to the Republican Party. He's now switched over to the Democrats, and he's an ugly man in a dress now named Jennifer Pritzker.
Relation to JB?
Yes, yes, his brother. And so it's all been driven. The transgender movement was started and funded by Republicans, not by Democrats. And it's the donor class that's been pushing it. And that's why you had remember the Republican governor of Arkansas vetoed a bill that would outlaw transing kids?
Yep.
Same thing happened in Mississippi.
Ohio.
Right? Ohio. This all happens because the donor class puts pressure onto these political officials, and because they really do control the party. So that's how it happened. That's how my leftist wife, who wants to trans my son, attained more political power with the Republican Party in Texas to trans my son than I could muster as a conservative.
It's insane because you think of Texas and you think it's got to be super conservative. And, you know, a lot of people feel the same way about Tennessee. You know, we were talking about transgender ideology books in libraries in Sumner County, and they're all over the state.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to be this super conservative majority, and we can't do something as simple as removing those books. So we're talking with Jeff Younger, and you'd said, okay, so Texas rules against you. You lose all your rights. You're then in a fight for keeping your wife and your children, your two boys, in Texas.
Yes.
That goes all the way to the Supreme Court.
Correct.
When it goes to the Supreme Court, they don't rule in your favor.
No, they let her move.
What was the justification behind that?
It's absolutely bizarre. So the justices that wrote the opinion against me, and nobody wrote an opposing opinion, by the way, a dissenting opinion, were Justice Blacklock, I call him Black-Hearted Blacklock, and Justice Young. And this, keep in mind, this is right after California passed its transgender kidnapping law. Like, a lot of people don't know this, but it is not safe for you to visit California with your children if you're a conservative. Actually, the Alliance Defending Freedom and many other conservative groups have put out warnings about this. In California, if somebody in California, it could be a teacher, it could be a psychologist, any licensed care provider, like say your kid gets a cold while you're on a vacation there, if that doctor decides that your kid might be transgender, California will not let the child leave the state. So after they passed this transgender kidnapping bill, which was passed by a guy named, I name names. His name is Senator Weiner in the California Senate. He's from San Francisco.
Familiar with him.
And I've often said the only transgender surgery that I would ever approve of is amputating the wiener out of the California Senate. So Weiner passed this bill. And so right after it's passed, she wants to move to California. She gets permission from the judge. She gets permission from the Texas Supreme Court. She moves there. And then I'm set up for a new trial in California. After she moved,
and you can't be too confident at that point. You're like, I just lost in Texas.
Correct.
So what am I up against in California?
Correct. And I think it's noteworthy that less than 6 months after Justice Black-Hearted Blacklock ruled against my son and condemned him to transgender mutilation, less than 6 months later, the governor of Texas promoted him to Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court. And I think that was payback for a little favor. The governor has been involved in my case all the way through it.
Governor Abbott?
Yes. So the counselor that was assigned to my son by Bloody Mary Brown, Judge Bloody Mary Brown in the 301st District Court, was the same psychologist that Abbott appointed to the Red Flag Commission to take our gun rights based on psychological criteria. Remember those Red Flag Commissions? She was on the Red Flag Commission in Texas to design those psychological criteria to take our gun rights. She was the counselor that was assigned as my son's counselor. Do you think that's a little bit of a coincidence? Yeah. So she wouldn't give me my son's medical records because my son told her he didn't want to be a girl, and she would not reveal that to the court. So I sued to get her records because she wouldn't have given them to me. Abbott sent his personal attorney to defend her, and I did not get those records.
Wow.
So Abbott has been involved from the very beginning in this. Abbott is a petty, small, and vindictive man. and he doesn't forget slights. And when I was trying to get, I did successfully outlaw these transgender procedures in Texas. That's why she had to flee to California. Well, Abbott opposed me all the way. Dade Phelan opposed me all the way. Dustin Burrows in Texas fought me all the way. And I forced the governor to sign that bill, and I forced the governor to change policies in his HHS, which was a trans. They had a whole webpage on transing kids and how to trans your kid. And I forced him to do that and embarrassed him. He's a very small, petty, and vindictive man. He never forgets things like that.
We're talking with Jeff Younger, and it seems like we've only scratched the tip of the iceberg. You're good to hang out for a little while, right?
Absolutely.
I want to hear more. We'll continue this conversation on the other side. I'm reading through the text messages. People are just surprised and enraged at this story. We're in studio with Jeff Younger. Jeff, you have two wonderful boys and a great life, and then at 2.5, your wife started transitioning your young son. You said, that's not going to fly.
Right.
And you put your foot down, which a court battle ensues.
Mm-hmm.
And this court battle is not one that you won.
No, 11-year court battle and lost it.
Where we left off the story, your wife had just taken a case to the Supreme Court in Texas to allow her to move to California. You lost that case.
I lost that case.
You put a lot of blame squarely on the Republicans in Texas.
Yes.
A couple texters have issues with believing that Republicans and Republican donors would fund this stuff. What would you say to that?
Listen, we have this wonderful thing called the internet these days. You don't have to believe me, right? As I said, go out, Google Paul Singer, Manhattan Institute, LGBT, and you'll just see scores of interviews with him. You can go verify that he founded the Human Rights Campaign, which is it's the yellow equal sign that you see on the cars. Right? Go to the Wikipedia page and you'll see who it was founded by. And this is the wonderful thing about the internet. You can just go fact check me right away. So go do it.
And he's a major donor for the Republican Party.
He's the largest donor to the Republican Party. He's a hedge fund billionaire. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Has been for some time the largest donor. He's the largest out-of-state donor in many states as well. And he's a huge contributor to Governor Abbott.
When you're going through this, I'm sure for a little while you have to think like, cooler heads will prevail. But at a certain point, you probably realize the deck is stacked against you. When did you realize that the deck was stacked against you as the father?
It actually did not occur in court. I was very hopeful in court, especially after the 2019 ruling. It was trying to get a bill to outlaw these procedures on kids in Texas, and it took me 6 years, 3 legislative sessions to get it done. The first year I went up there, it was blocked by Speaker of the House Dade Phelan and the Lieutenant Governor. The first time I went, they just said, "We're not hearing this. And it was basically very clear that their donors had told them to drop this." I came back 2 years. In Texas, we only let our legislature meet every other year.
Yep.
We're afraid of what they might do. So the second session comes around. I go there and I start getting meetings with people, and I find a legislative sponsor who begins to disrupt the legislative process on the floor unless this bill is taken seriously, okay? We start to negotiate. They want to take out, so my bill had 3 sentences in it, which would have classified these procedures as felony child sexual abuse.
Which they should be.
Yeah, which in Texas will get you life in prison, okay? The reason I wanted the criminal provisions is precisely because then you could not take your child out of Texas to Colorado or California, castrate your child, and then bring him back to Texas.
Right.
Right? If you take your kid to Thailand and sexually abuse your kid and come back to Texas, we're going to hang you in Texas. That's how it works, okay? So it was important that it be a criminal offense.
It needs some teeth.
It needs some teeth. Instead, what they did is they simply banned the medical procedure. That's ultimately, that omission is what allowed my ex-wife to move to California, okay? And that was, I believe, calculated by the Texas Republican establishment. They changed the law for that reason, right? They still didn't pass it, even though we negotiated, and finally it got passed in the third time I went up there. So it took me 6 years. Just think about this for a second. You're talking about conservative Republicans, and it takes me 6 years and $180,000, where I eventually just bought the bill. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I just bought the bill. I went out. It turns out you can buy legislators in the states. Everybody wants to do this. For about $10,000, you can buy a legislative vote. So I just spent a lot of money and got it passed. Okay. So why did it take me 6 years to get these passed? And for those skeptics out there, why did Republican governors in all these states veto these laws? Why did our Arkansas governor veto these laws when they were passed by their legislature? Why did Ohio? Right? So you can clearly see that there's some force in the Republican Party that's pro-transgender and is blocking these bills. And the answer is, well, it's the donor class.
It's a wild story. We're going to pick it up on the other side after the headlines with Joan Jones. I want to hear more about what happened after your wife went to California and kind of how you have picked up the pieces and kept the fight going moving forward. I think it's an unbelievable story. It's not a story that we want to realize is happening, and I think it's happening to more people than just you. But you have a loud voice in the movement. I'm grateful for you speaking up. We'll talk more about it on the other side. It's 10:30. This is Super Talk 99.7
Miss Chris
WTN.
Hand.
In studio with my friend Jeff Younger, who is just incredibly brave, sharing an unbelievable story. And hopefully you've caught the first half of it. Just to briefly recap, Jeff went through a bit of a custody battle with his wife, to say the least. Lost custody of his 2 sons. And the reason that there was a battle in the first place was because his wife wanted to transition one of his twin boys. And Jeff said, that's not going to fly with me. So it went through all the court systems in Texas, all the way up to the Supreme Court in some cases. And Jeff didn't pick up many victories there. And I asked you off air, how old are your sons now? This started with when your son was 2.5, and you said your boys are 13.
That's right.
So what does it feel like today? Because contact is still limited, correct?
Well, I really can't contact my sons. They put me under supervised visitation again, but this time under California law. And under California law, failing to affirm a child in their chosen gender is considered child abuse. And so I could get a child abuse restraining order if I were to talk to my son and use his real name, for example, his so-called dead name. And that would give me a permanent loss of my Second Amendment rights. I would lose my passport. There's a lot of consequences to that. So it's just not safe for me to talk to my sons. And they did that specifically for that reason, knowing that that would hold me off. I tried writing letters to my sons. The court ruled that my ex-wife doesn't even have to give my letters to my sons. So where I'm at now is, I post letters to my sons on social media because they're getting to the age where they're probably going to find me. And, I talk to them in that way. And I try to set a public example for them so that my son James especially knows that at no time did I ever hurt him. At no time did I ever stop opposition to his mother hurting him. And that I never allowed any of my resources to go to hurting him. And I think when he comes to his senses when he's 18, these 3 things are going to be really important for me to have a relationship with him. I can't be one of the people that participated in hurting him. And unfortunately in California right now, their position is that I have to pay medical child support, which includes the medical costs of castrating my son. And
so not only do you have to sit there, grin and bear it, but you also have to fund it.
That's correct. And so I'm refusing to pay child support now since they've chemically castrated my son. And
what are the consequences of that?
Well, in California, that's a felony, and I'm looking at 2 years in prison. I'll probably also endure about an 18-month confinement on contempt of court before that. So I'm looking at 3.5 to 4 years in prison. And by that time, my sons will be 18. And hopefully when I get out of prison, we can have a relationship. That's what I'm looking at. But I'm not going to allow the state to torture me into abusing my son. It's not going to happen.
Well, God bless you for standing firm, man. I don't know how you're doing it. The strength that you're showing is unbelievable. So when does that court case come up?
My guess is it'll happen next year. The initial filings are just ongoing right now, and they're going through all the administrative procedures to make all that stuff happen. You have to assemble. The California Attorney General will get involved. His name is Bonta. He's an extremely evil man, and the California establishment has just as many reasons to want to get me as the Texas establishment, perhaps more. And there's a guy named Asaf Orr who runs the transgender operations for the American Civil Liberties Union. He's been very active in these cases behind the scenes. I'm pretty sure he's involved at some level. And then you have the Bar Association with the judges. It's very clear that the judges in my case had colluded for outcomes. So, for example, my ex-wife didn't have to give me any evidence in discovery.
That seems a bit off.
That's a bit off. So I went to trial with no evidence from her. They denied me an independent medical exam of my son. They denied me an independent psychological exam of my son. So I went in with literally no evidence, and they made sure of that. And then they got the court reporters to refuse to give me the records of the trial. So the court reporters simply wouldn't give me the records, which delayed my appeal sufficiently that the deadlines passed.
So you've just had the deck stacked against you every step of the way.
Yeah, and it's clearly a coordinated thing. They want to make an example of me because I won't stop speaking out.
We're talking with Jeff Younger, and I think this is an important story. How do you keep your faith through all of this?
Man, I have a prayer rule. So I pray 3 times a day. I fast a lot, and I confess my sins a lot. I really think repentance and confessing your sins to Jesus is probably the most powerful thing you can do in your life. I think a lot of people think about worship, and that's all important, and it's definitely vital to a Christian life. But that worship should convict you to repent. And one of the things that's happened in this case that's very spiritual, actually, is, my ex-wife published everything bad that I've ever done in my life, everything bad people said I did that I didn't do, and even all things that I ever wanted to do that were bad but didn't do have all been published. It's all public. And it has the effect of a public confession. I totally get why the early Christians did public confessions, because once you just give up worrying about your reputation and you just accept that you're just a fallen sinner like everybody else, that you're not the central character in the story, and you just accept that, there's something tremendously freeing about it. They have, this is one of the things they tried with me over and over again. They threatened to take my property and everything, and I would just give them the property. I don't care about money. I don't care. I don't need a nice house. I don't need anything. So going to prison, somebody asked me about this. One of the lawyers asked me about it, and I said, well, so what is it? It's 3 hots and a cot. I'm going to lose a lot of weight and get shredded, and my wife's going to think I'm super attractive because I'm so shredded and in shape. I'm going to have plenty of leisure time to finish my book. There's probably a lot of guys there that need some Christian ministering to. I'll be able to probably do some good things. How bad can that possibly be, is the way I look at this stuff. And that transformation, in my point of view, is strictly a result of constant repentance and asking Jesus to forgive me and just accepting that I'm just a sinner.
It's an unbelievable story, what you've been through and what your son has been through, and that you continue to fight. What would you say to parents out there who are going through similar struggles?
Listen, you're fighting a court system that is really against you. I mean, the family court system has been so weaponized against parents at this point. There's no respect for parental rights anywhere in the family court system. It operates on what's called in the law a preponderance of the evidence standard, which means, if just 51% of the evidence shows, something, they can just take your parental rights. Right? There's no protection for, and when you have something like it could just be 51%, you can see the judge could just pick any evidence they want to make whatever outcome they want happen. What we actually need are strict protections in state constitutions for parental rights. And in Texas, we just got through the Senate some propositions, Proposition 15 in Texas, that would enshrine parental rights as a fundamental liberty interest in Texas. But Republicans in Texas are opposing it. Texas Eagle Forum came out against it. True Texas Project came out against it. So we've got Republicans opposing a parental rights amendment to the Texas Constitution to protect parental rights in family court and against CPS, when everyone full well knows these courts and agencies are violating parental rights left and right.
It's insane.
It's insane.
So where do you go next? What's your next steps on this battle? And this, I mean, you're in a battle.
Yeah, it's a battle. Well, I can't. I'm under seal from a federal court, and I can't talk about details about this, but I shut down the gender clinic that my son was in LA County, that Johanna Olsen Kennedy. Remember her from the 2019 trial? They put my son in that clinic, and I shut that clinic down, or participated with other people in shutting that clinic down. We went after the Boston clinic, and I'm going to go after the clinic in San Francisco next. What I'm going to do is everywhere my son goes in and does a gender clinic, I'm going to try to shut the gender clinic down.
You're just focusing on offense.
I'm going to delay operation until he's 18. That's what I'm trying to do.
And how do you feel that it's going so far?
It's hard. Look, because I don't have a lot of information about him, it's hard for me to know, right? But I think the shutdown of that gender clinic in LA, that's the largest gender clinic in the world, was a major blow. And I think there are even some people on the left that are waking up in California to this travesty. And I intend to make it much more difficult for Bonta, the Attorney General in California, to continue to allow these practices to go on in his state.
How can, this audience is pretty active and they're probably fired up. Like, how can we jump in and help stand in the gap with you?
So here's the thing. The best thing you can do is make your city, county, and state safe for children. So you talked about libraries earlier.
Yep.
Okay, so I live in Flower Mound, Texas. I went to the library and they had a book up there, Beyond Magenta, which is an infamous transgender book that has graphic depictions of child sex. I filed a FOIA request, we call them public records request in Texas with the library, about who got that book and so forth. And I also worded it in a way where they had to give me all their emails and everything else. They delivered it on the very last day. They hand-delivered it. In paper, not electronically. And when I made that request, they actually reported me to the city council as making terroristic threats because I wanted to remove this book. They admitted in emails that they were putting these books and promoting them out of the regular shelves so that children who were transgender, who couldn't talk to their parents about it, could learn about it. So it was specifically done to bypass parents. And they did background checks on me with city money, which was illegal. So just to let you know what you're up against, I'm in conservative county in Texas, and I'm trying to get these books out of this. So you need to get the books out. There's another problem with this, though. Like, I went to my son's school library, and I looked at all the books in the library. My sons are boys. They don't have any books where the boys are heroes anymore. All the old books are gone. So I have a whole bunch of, I bought quite a bunch of them, and I had a bunch of old books, Edgar Rice Burroughs and all those things. I took them to the school library and donated them, and they said they couldn't take them because they reinforced traditional gender stereotypes. So it's not only the books they're putting in, it's the books they're leaving out of the library. So you need to make sure that, why isn't Tarzan in your library?
Right.
Why isn't it in there? And donate the books and force them to not take them. Or donate the books and force them to admit they threw them away and they didn't put them on the shelves. Do an information request. So libraries become cultural centers for children in towns, and they're very important for parents to be active in. I don't believe that you can save the public schools at this point. I think that if you are a conservative of the libertarian persuasion or the Christian persuasion or whatever persuasion, that you cannot leave your children in public schools. There is no way at this point I can see that in the short term, we can possibly reform these schools. I agree with that. So you got to homeschool your kids, which turns out to be spectacularly easy, by the way.
It's deceptively easy.
It's crazy.
So we started homeschooling.
Did you?
Yeah,
Fantastic.
Yeah, we have 4. And it's like, you think about, we're getting this done in 4 days instead of 5?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unreal what you can do.
Absolutely. Look, my 9-year-old son's read the Iliad and did fantastic analysis of the Iliad. Okay, when your children aren't held back, it's amazing what they can do. My sons learned mathematics through shop math. I do woodworking. We just went out and did woodworking, and they learned ratios. They were doing trigonometry at 10.
Let's go.
Right on. And it's because they could relate it to. They built their own beds. They built their own dressers, and they used that stuff. So they needed it as a tool. So they learn it. If you need it, you learn it, right? So you got to get your kids out of public school. And you got to start getting a lot wiser about local and state politics and the effects of the donor class on politics. You have to know who's giving the money. I'll give you a story to illustrate one method that you can use as an activist. I was invited to a donor party in Texas, and this is one area where I'm not going to name names because a lot of these people helped me. I had one guy walk up to me and say, "Has the governor of Texas helped you at all with this?" And I said, "No, he hasn't made any statements or anything." This guy got on a mobile phone and made a phone call to somebody, and he said, "If you're not going to blankety blank help this man, I'm going to pull $2 million out." The next day, the governor of Texas made a public statement supporting me and my case.
Wow.
So what you realize is that your lobbying efforts with elected officials are misguided. Okay, they're necessary, but they're not sufficient. You have to lobby the donors too, the big donors. I went to a banker in Texas, and I brought him a board that had a design on it, and it had a cowboy castrating a cow, and I had put his face on the cowboy. And I said, "You're donating money to that are opposing bills to protect children, and I'm going to put this billboard up right across from your bank." I said, "Look out your window on the second story in the offices. Look out your window there." I had people ringing the bank, handing out flyers to other banks where they could get free checking and explaining this guy was supporting trans and kids. The next day, my bill went through the Senate. Okay? So you're going to have to learn how to play the donor game, find out who's donated these candidates, how you can get leverage over them, as well as elected officials. Because the reality is elected officials only do what they're paid to do. That's the sad fact. So you got to find out who the donors are and go to their churches. Ask them in front of people in their church, "Why do you support trans and kids? Why are you doing this? Why are you donating money to this candidate? Who's doing this?" They value money, power, and reputation, and you can threaten any three of those and get them to do what you want. So you're going to have to play a different kind of political game.
That's great advice. Jeff Younger, where can we find you on social media so we can keep up with these stories?
You can find me on Facebook at Jeff Younger Show and on X at Jeff Younger Show. And I don't actually have a show, guys. It was a joke. I felt like my life had become so public. It was like the Truman Show.
Yeah.
And so it's actually a joke. I don't have a show, so don't go looking for a show.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to come in and share your story, man. And I appreciate the fight that you have.
Great being here.
And anything you need from me, you just let me know, and we'll get you on, and we'll help spread the word.
Will do. Thank you.
I appreciate it.